What would it take for you to abandon your only way home? Imagine 5 friends driving at night. Their car is working perfectly. It has plenty of gas. But for some unknown reason, they stop, get out, and walk away from it, deep into a frozen, hostile wilderness. This is the story of the Yuba County 5. A simple trip to a basketball game became a national mystery. They weren't lost in the traditional sense. They had shelter, they had food, but they still perished. The baffling question isn't just what happened to them, but why they made a series of inexplicable choices that led them on a fatal detour into the unknown. They were known in their hometown of Yuba City, California, as the Boys: Ted Wyhar, Jack Madruga, Jackie Hoot, Bill Sterling, and Gary Mathias. Ranging in age from 24 to 32, they were inseparable. With the exception of Mathias, the men all had mild intellectual or learning disabilities. They lived at home, worked simple jobs, and shared a passionate love for basketball. On the night of February 24, 1978, the group was ecstatic. They were scheduled to play in a Special Olympics basketball tournament the next day, a major event they had been looking forward to for weeks. To celebrate, they piled into Jack Madruga's prized 1969 Mercury Montego to watch a college basketball game in the nearby city of Chico. After the game, at around 10 p.m., they made their last confirmed stop, a convenience store in Chico. The clerk remembered them well. They bought snacks, sodas, and chocolate milk. They were cheerful, polite, and excited for their big game. They got back in the car for the simple 50-mile drive south to Yuba City. They never arrived. When none of the men returned home, their frantic families called the police. An investigation began, but there was no trace of them. Then, 3 days later, a forest ranger made a discovery that only deepened the mystery. High up in the remote snow-covered Plumas National Forest, he found the Mercury Montego. It was parked on a dirt road 70 miles from Chico in the opposite direction of their homes, a place they had no reason to be, especially in the dead of winter. The car was unlocked. Inside were the empty wrappers from the snacks they had bought. There was no sign of foul play. The car had a quarter tank of gas, and when the ranger turned the key, it started immediately. It was not stuck. So why, in the freezing cold, did 5 men abandon a perfectly good car? The brutal winter snows made a ground search impossible. For agonizing months, the families waited in torment. As the spring thaw began in June, the forest started to give up its secrets, revealing a scene of horror and utter confusion. Nearly 20 miles from the abandoned car, a group of motorcyclists came across a Forest Service trailer, a shelter for backcountry workers. They opened the door and were hit by an overwhelming smell. Inside, they found the emaciated body of Ted Wyhar lying on a bed, wrapped in 8 sheets, as if his friends had tried to give him a proper burial. The scene inside the trailer was a labyrinth of contradictions. Ted Wyhar had starved to death. But when investigators opened a storage shed outside, they found it was fully stocked with military rations and canned food enough to keep all 5 men alive for a year. A hole had been punched in the shed's window to access it. Someone had entered the shed and brought food into the trailer. A dozen cans had been opened, but not with a standard can opener. They were opened with a P-38, a type of opener used in the military. Only Gary Mathias and Jack Madruga had served in the Army and would have known how to use one. But despite this, Ted Wyhar, a man who weighed over 200 pounds, had wasted away to just 115. The trailer had a fireplace, thick wooden furniture that could be broken up for kindling, and plenty of matches. Yet no fire was ever lit. Most bizarre of all, Ted Wyhar's shoes were missing. They were later identified as belonging to Gary Mathias. It seemed Mathias had taken them. In the following days, the remains of the other men were found. Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were discovered 11 miles from the car, their bodies decomposed and picked apart by animals. It appeared they had given up and succumbed to hypothermia long before reaching the trailer. Jackie Hoot's bones were found a few days later, closer to the trailer. He had made it further than the others, but not far enough. The only one who remains unaccounted for is Gary Mathias. His tennis shoes were found in the trailer, implying he put on Ted Wyhar's larger shoes to walk in the snow. Mathias had a history of schizophrenia, but his family insisted he was stable and on his medication. Did he suffer a sudden psychotic break? Did he lead his friends who trusted him up that lonely road? His fate remains the central missing piece of this tragic puzzle. Theories have swirled for decades. Did they simply get lost and, in a state of collective confusion, make a series of catastrophic errors? Or did they encounter someone else on that road? A local man named Joseph Shans told police he had a heart attack on that same road that night and saw a group, including a woman with a baby, who ignored his cries for help. Was there another vehicle involved? There is no villain in this story, only victims of a bewildering chain of events. A simple drive to a basketball game turned into an encounter with an inexplicable fate. The car, the trailer, the food, the path they walked, every single clue is a contradiction that leads to more questions. They had the means to survive, but something, either inside their own minds or out there in the woods, prevented them from doing so. What happened on that mountain? What fear or confusion could possibly lead 5 men to abandon their only lifeline and walk willingly into a frozen nightmare? The story of the Yuba County Five is a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are not born of malice, but of a simple, inexplicable, and fatal detour into the unknown. If this case left you with chills, the story of Brandon Swanson, the college student who vanished mid-phone call with his father, will prove that even a direct line to help is sometimes not enough.